the forms. 1041, W-2, W-3, etc. And of course, if you have to do the ACA, it also gives you that. So it's important to know. Employee copies of W-2 forms must be postmarked by January 31st. And this is new, because in the past you didn't have to e-file until, I don't know, it was sometime like after February 28th or something. Anyway, it was late. But this year they've changed it. And so everything has to be done by January 31st. So it says here, be sure to get them in by January 28th. And that will give Atrix time to get them filed. So there's all kinds of articles here that you can see about that. And then it tells you what you have to have. Also, when you go in to do Atrix, go ahead and do it. And it will say that it needs to upgrade. Go ahead and run it. Be sure, because it will have any new tax forms or anything like that. Now, I did it today, and they already have the 2018 forms on there. It's ready to go. It also tells you that you can save these reports in progress, and then you can come back to work on them. So if you have a report in progress that you want to save and you can't finish it, excuse me, then go ahead up to the top and say File Save, and it will save it, and then you can come back to saved reports later. Also, any changes that you make to these forms in Atrix, you can make the changes anywhere you want. You can change those numbers, you can change dollars, you can change, put anything in the columns that you want, but it does not write back to the payroll file. So it tells you right here, it's not written back. So you'll need to know that that's not going to be reflected if you run payroll reports. And then, as usual, back up. You can print your W-2s before or after closing the payroll year, because when you go in, it's going to ask you, which year do you want to process, this year or last year? So you can go ahead and close payroll, start working with the new payroll, and then do your W-2s later on in the month. If you have a problem getting into Atrix, hopefully this will help. There's a link here as well. Assistance at year-end. It's good to know that at Sage City, right here are some links. Here are the ACA. Here's year-end. You can also get information here. So they have questions and links to forms, and links to reports, and things like that. And it's free. In Sage City, some of that's free and some of it you pay for, but this is free. It tells you here, I'm sure you know by now, how to determine what software version you're on. You just go to Help, About, and Any Application, and it will tell you. And then the training, we're having it today. A lot of people are having, it's all complimentary. Here you're seeing that there are some video lessons. You can find them at Sage University. Earlier in the month, TUG had some as well. If you're a member of TUG, then you could have enrolled for those. I don't know about the one at Sage University, but the ones that they were given it for TUG, they were long. So they were an hour, hour and a half each, covering like payroll and then, general ledger. So there was more detail to that. If you haven't already, you need to enroll with Atrix. I recommend, if you haven't already or you forget what your login is, go ahead and do that now. Don't wait until you have to file your forms. If you've been filing your forms through Atrix all this time, then you already know how to get in. And then it gives you information here just about filing with Atrix. If you have any questions about Atrix, then we can talk about that. But it does go step by step by step. And then a forms update. This is the one I said, and it's important, and I may say it again. go ahead and do an automatic update. If you go in and it tells you that you need to do an update, that new forms are expired or you have an update, go ahead and run it and do an automatic update. That way it'll just get everything. And it may take a while, so you may just need to let it run. Hit next, and then you'll have to close it and then get back into it to run your forms. So here's your checklist. Run and post the final payroll for the year you are closing. Do not download and update payroll taxes before you do this. Be sure that you use the current payroll taxes for this. So run and post the final payroll for the year. Posting is very important. Go ahead and reconcile. There are several reports in here that you can use for reconciliation to give you totals. And you can even go in and run your W-2s anytime you want in test mode. Just go ahead and run them in test mode and see what they look like to date. Make sure that you don't have any, because if you run them, if you'll go ahead and run some tests in Matrix, it will tell you if you have an invalid Social Security number or if you have an invalid, like a zip code or something like that. So go ahead and do that and be prepared. Reconcile payroll to general ledger, and then go back in and enter information if you have to. If you're not what they call a large employer, I think that's what, 51 employees and more. So if you have to file those, then there's detailed information down here on page 55 to tell you how to do that. Just click over here and tell you how to produce them. Here's a checklist, and then how to figure out how many full-time employees you have, which is what you have to report. So it just goes down and tells you the information, and then it also tells you here, there's a table for entering it. Okay. And then down here it tells you how to generate them. Again, changes you make in Matrix are not written back. Allow enough time. And just keep going, and it goes step by step in here. Print your management reports. Make a backup of your entire database. It says make a backup of your entire database, and you're going to make a backup of your entire database probably a couple of times if you're closing out other modules. Ideally, you would want to back up before you do your W-2s or before you close the year in payroll. But still, after all is said and done, the one that you really need to keep ultimately is, is the one that you make after you close general ledger and you have a complete set of books for that year. Make sure that's the one that is your archive that you treat like your printed set of books. Install the 2018 year-end update, and down here there's a link to it. And then customize the W-2 forms if necessary. When you customize your W-2 forms, it may be that you added something during the year, some kind of benefit or something. And so if you go into Modify W-2 forms and click on amounts, then you're going to get this. And so now you can put in boxes 7 through 14 with this information here. So you can do formulas. You can just bring in the fringe, like this is what happened here. Fringe. The deduction. Anything that you need to report here. Okay. And then generate your W-2s. Again, you can do that before or after closing payroll. Generate your ACA forms at any time, also before the end of the month, before or after closing. Generate your additional federal and state quarterly forms. As you know, the federal, you have to mail it in, so it'll produce that for you. It'll also file it electronically for you if you wish. And then you close the year. After you close the year, again, it says create an annual archive. So after you close the year, then if you want to, you can move employees to another folder, or you can move checks to the history file. There's a good bit that you can do to clear out your current files. But you don't want to do that until you've run all of your reports for the year. Because if you're moving employees to the history file, then or an archive file or folder, then you don't want to miss them. So leave them in there until you've run all your reports. And then in January, now you download and update taxes for 2019. And it's a very quick and easy process. In payroll, under tools. If you'll go ahead and download taxes, there's a button here that you can click that says go ahead and update. And so then it will automatically update. If you don't choose that, then it's going to store that file somewhere, and then you can come back in and you can update later. Under there. Right here. But you don't want to do this. Until you've already closed out the previous year, done your last payroll, because new limits will take effect and all kinds of stuff. So, talking about updating taxes, what happens? Show you what happens. In case you ever have to do this manually for some reason or other. Under tax rates, what it does is it goes through here and updates any tax tables in the federal and updates Social Security. And that's how I see that it is current. If I go into one of the Social Securities, it tells me right here. So it should say 1119. So that's how you can confirm, because as you know, Social Security is going to change every year. So this number will go up, and this will be a new effective date here. So you shouldn't have to come in and change anything. It should already be in here for you. Okay. And then if you go to the federal, you can go down here to table, because it tells you that it's a table right here. So I'll go to table. If I hit next, here's my table. Anybody that's familiar with a circular E will recognize this. So this is from the circular E. However, what I do is if anybody needs this information, I usually do screenshots after I update taxes here, because there's some of them that have a formula. Right here, there's a formula. Okay. So we want to be sure those formulas are met. But that's what it does. If you needed to, you could just type these numbers in. Okay. And there's a flow chart here, which basically just goes straight through everything that we just did here. And then to prepare the year, you run and post it, you reconcile your reports, and this just gets into more detail of what we looked at up there. The standard steps for a month-end closing. But this is important. Decide if you need to retain year-to-date totals for any pays, fringes, or deductions. So you may have accrued vacation time that you want to retain the year-to-date, so it just continues accruing and then adjusting when you make adjustments. Employee loans that will just keep on going until it's paid off. So if you need to do the year-to-date, then over in the setup, say, they don't even have, here, loan repayment. There you go. You would want to click that box, retain year-to-date totals at close year. What that will do is, over in the employee file, instead of closing out and starting over for the new year, it's just going to keep the same totals in there. So over here, on the year-to-date, it would just keep accruing and keep accruing. That way, if you had, say there was a loan in here and you had a limit of, say, $500, and the limit period was never, then it's going to accumulate over here until it reaches $500. If instead you have it set up to close out and you don't have that retained year-to-date set, then you're going to lose that information and it's going to start over. So this is important. You can do it for pays. I only see it really for deductions, and you can do it for fringes. And then closing the year, all it does, it just tells you to close the year. So make sure that you look at the date, because if somebody else snuck in there and closed the year too, then you'd be closing the next year. So be sure that it says the new year is going to be the new year and not a year in the future. And then preparing for the first payroll of the new year. So you could have archived all that information. You'd have everything fresh. Again, it gets into the detail. Perform the close year tasks, download the payroll, tax update the taxes, verify that they've been updated, and the year end is 2019. And the way I told you to do that was to go in and look at the Social Security tax and make sure that it says 1/1/19. If you have employees who live or work in Oregon, this is specific to Oregon. I know you guys don't. However, I do want to point out that there is a new field over here in pay groups. And so you can run it too if you want to. There's no reason you don't have to report this like they do. However, over here at the very end, there's a new field. And it says, what do you want the pay basis to be? So it could be hourly. You'll recognize this from pays as well. It could be hourly, shift, day, week, salary, piece, or commission. And then that way you can do a report. There's a report that you can run that will give you information based on this right here. So do it or not, it's up to you. And by the way, that report is not on the menu, on the reports menu, but it is under the reports folder if you want to run it. Okay. And then here it gets into the details of maintaining your files for the employees or the checks. And again, a caution, don't move them until you've done this. It also says that you should run File Doctor. File Doctor is a very special thing. It compacts files, it finds corruption in your files. But I have run it before where there's been such corruption on files that that it just wiped out the data, or it required Sage coming in and fixing it. So run File Doctor cautiously and run it when there's no one in the system, and run it like maybe on a Friday afternoon. And really it should be run about once a month, but you want to be real careful if you go in here. Let's see if we have, nope, doesn't show the details. So File Doctor. Make sure that you have a current backup. However, there, just as a word of caution, I've even had a full backup before, and still when I ran File Doctor on some files, the file was so corrupt that Sage still had to fix it. It wouldn't let me restore the previous. It said you have to fix this file before you can go forward. It didn't take them long to fix it, but still, it put the company out of business for, a couple hours. So if you're going to do the File Doctor, then you can choose here. So you have payroll files, and if you're doing your tax, say you're doing your current transaction file, you would click this, Compact Good Files. If, after you run this, be absolutely sure that you look at the journal, because when you look at the journal, it will tell you if there is any corruption at all, or if you need to run it with this. If it says that you need to fix this and run it with this checked, then only do it for that file that they said. Don't do it for all files, or it'll take all night the next day. So just do it for this file, and it will fix it if it can. And if it can't, it will tell you that it can't. And then you'll have to get with Sage. So doing it every now and then. The main thing that I run into in any of these files when I do File Doctor is simply people copying text from somewhere into, like Word or somewhere into Timberline, and then what happens is it sees maybe it has a 1/2 or some kind of symbol, and it sees it as a non-printable symbol, and so it'll give you that error. And just don't worry about that. Sometimes it says you have to fix it. Sometimes it's just a warning. So that's the most common one. But if there's something like, a file has lost a header for some reason, then it'll show up there. So be very, very, very cautious with that. Okay. Archive procedures. All right. So if you have any questions on payroll, of course, I don't think you will. It's pretty laid out in here. Like I said, it's a long book, and it shows all the screenshots and everything, but I'll be glad to help, as you know, as I have in the past, anytime. Closing the year in AP basically is you don't have to close this every month. You just close it at the end of the year. However, there are 2 years that you close in here. You have a fiscal year, and you have a 1099 year. The 1099 year is always on 12/31, of course, but the fiscal year can be at any. It may be your fiscal GL fiscal year, or you may also have this as a calendar year. So basically, really, it's just reconcile AP to itself, meaning be sure that you print an AP aging, and sure enough, everything on there you really do owe. And if not, then go ahead and write them off, or do corrections, or do whatever you need to do. Then make sure that your AP matches GL. So run your aging report and compare it to your general ledger. And then print your aging reports and any other reports that you might want to run, your check registers and such. And basically it tells you, make sure your fiscal year ending date, just check it and check the year ending date for your 1099. However, when you go to close, if you click close the year, it also tells you what the previous year was and what the current year is going to be. So again, pay attention to that and don't close it twice. It's important that you don't close it twice. So make a backup. Install the 2018 year-end software update. It will cover everything for year-end. So once you install it, you have it installed for payroll and AP and everything. Verify the vendor information for 1099 and 1099 amounts, and there's a couple of different ways that you can do that in AP. There's a report for tax preparation, 1099 preparation. 1099 preparation just tells you how much. Do you want it to the vendor or by physical entity? If you have multiple physical entities in your database, then you may want to do it by physical entity. And it's just a simple report. So if you see that you're missing a tax ID or somebody isn't on here that should be because that little box is not marked, then you'll want to do something about that. As you know, we're in the sample data, and the sample data is back in 2015. But so you can run it this way, or if you want, you can go straight into Atrix down here. Just go straight into Atrix and just run them. And again, do a test run. And it will tell you if you have any invalid IDs or anything like that. Close the year. The reason it's important to close the year, especially for your 1099s and the vendor setup. Here. We have a this year, and we have a last year, and we have a next year. And these are the numbers it's going to use for your 1099s. So if you have closed the year and now you're in 2019 and you want to run 2018, then you're going to use last year's numbers. So you want to be sure that, I say the very latest, right now, if your year has not been closed in AP, be sure to go in and close the year in AP. Okay, because if you have not closed the year and you're sitting in 2017, then 2018 is sitting right here in the next year bucket. So you've got to close the year and bring it over to this year before the end of the year and before you do your 1099s. Okay. Again, create an annual archive. This is the backup. Perform file maintenance. What you would do there is move checks to history, the history file if you want. And then, of course, it gives you a flow chart again. So it says basically, enter all invoices, approve pending invoices. If you're using the pending invoice system, approve them if you're going to do that. Select the post invoice task, verify that everything's posted, and then, of course, enter all your payments for the year through the end of the year. That's when you're ready to reconcile. Run these reports, print your month-end reports, make a backup. Okay. And then you just close. Again, it tells you here how to move things to history. There's some questions here. Property management, you guys don't have. And then getting down to these. Accounts receivable, cash management, contracts, equipment job, and service. AR, you close every year. Cash management, you close every year. Contracts, you close every month. There is no close year. It's just the close month. So be sure to do that, because if you don't close contracts every month, then your previously billed amount is going to be wrong because it won't post. Equipment, close. Job costs, you have to close every month. There is no year-end close for job costs. You just close. And then it moves it every month, service. And you don't have to do them in this order. They're just in alphabetical order here. But general ledger is always last. You'll notice general ledger is not in this group. General ledger is always last. So accounts receivable is basically the same thing as AR. You post all your invoices and cash receipts for the year, print your year-end reports, and then you close the year. You can move the paid invoices to a history file if you wish. It's up to you. If you're going to move them through a certain date, just remember that when you go to run your reports, that some of this stuff is going to be in history. Same is true for cash management. I don't really know a lot of clients in reality that close cash management every year because they don't run reports that have year-to-date information from the master file. So a lot of people don't even know that you have to close the year in cash management. A lot of people will go back. I'll look and see when the year was closed, and it was last closed in 2008 or 2013 or something. So it doesn't affect processing. It just affects any reports that have a year-to-date total on it. And so you want to verify that all interest has been recorded. You want to be sure that you reconcile your December bank statement. Once you've reconciled and you're happy with your cash and it matches general ledger, then you go ahead and close, and that's it. If you want to, everything in your register file, you can move as many years as you want to your history file. So if you have from 2006 to 2018 in your register, maybe you want to move some of that stuff to a history file. Then you can include it or exclude it on reports. Tells you here that contracts don't have official year-end procedures. However, you do the month end. So every month you got to close. Every month you got to close. And if in contracts there is an inquiry other that shows you unposted transactions. So if you forgot to close the month and you went in to do your next billing and the previously billed was not the correct amount, it's probably unposted. So it's probably unposted over here. So if you come in contracts, you can see unposted transactions, and if there's anything in here, see here's some stuff unposted. Then it's probably because the month isn't closed, so go ahead and close the month and then post. Look at your journal to see, make sure that it got posted. And if it got rejected, figure out why. Because it's real important to have that. You can also go in and close. It says you can close contracts. Just go through and start closing contracts by sliding the slider over to closed or paid in full. The only reason for doing this really is to include or exclude them from billing and from reports. So once you close them, some people do it when you close the job. Some people do it when it's paid in full. Some people do it at the end of the year, and some people just don't do it. So it's up to you. It won't affect processing, but if you don't mark it closed, it'll keep showing up on current reports and to be billed and things like that. Equipment, print and post, close. Job cost, make sure that all your entries are in, including any journal entries that you make normally, like overhead, any year-end adjusting entries that you want to make to the jobs, anything like that. And then close the month. Verify that the month that you're in is closing is the last month in the fiscal year. So again, we're talking about fiscal years, but most people use 12/31 anyway. This is going to clear those year-to-date fields that you've got. All in the jobs and in the cost codes and everywhere, those year-to-date fields will be cleared out. It'll go to last year fields, and then the new year will be ready to start. So if you run any year-to-date reports based on those totals, you need to go ahead and run them before you close the month. And then you can move the transactions. You can move closed jobs to an archive folder. You can move both to an archive folder. So you have a lot of choices here. And of course, it'll depend on how big your jobs are, how many you have, how much data you have, as to whether you want to move them out, move them just to history, or just mark them closed. You could just mark them closed. And then service. Okay. And then we have general ledger. And general ledger, of course, you always prepare the same way you do every month. The only difference is you're going to send this to your CPA. It's going to do the year-end entries if you're not already doing depreciation and stuff like that. And then you'll make those entries, and then you can close your year. However, you do not have to wait until March or April or May to close your year. Go on and close it, because you can close it again. And when you do, then if it affected any income statements, these entries that the CPAs make, if it affects any income statement accounts, then you can close the year again, and it will roll that up into retained earnings. So be sure to go ahead and close your year. That way you can at least run a current month like a January income statement. Even if retained earnings is wrong on the balance sheet, you can at least start running your your income statement. So I encourage you to go ahead and close anyway. So record and post. Verify that all your suspense type accounts have a zero balance. If the type of account is suspense, it doesn't close out to anything. So then it could make your general ledger out of balance. So be sure that there's a zero balance in suspense. Print, of course, all of your month-end reports. Verify that they're in balance. Don't assume that if you run a financial statement, like a balance sheet or a trial balance, and it's out of balance, don't assume that it's in your data. It could just be that maybe you added an account at some point and you haven't added it to the financial statement yet, or something like that. So it could be in the report. So there's a number of ways that you can determine if your general ledger is out of balance, just exactly what it is. The easiest way to determine is I go into entries by account. I don't put any conditions or filters or anything in at all, and I just hit print preview. I go to the very last page, and my debit should equal my credits. If they do, then the transactions are right. So then everything else would just be reporting. Print your financial statements. Make a backup, of course. Print a year-to-date ledger. Of course, you would print it to PDF. And then close the fiscal year. When you close the fiscal year, it tells you what your retained earnings is going to be. If you're using partners, then it will also tell you how it's going to split it among partners. And having said this, if you get into let's see, general ledger, close year. It wants to know if you've backed up. If you say no, then, of course, it won't let you go forward. And then if you have multiple companies, then they'll all be here, and it will tell you where you are. Since I am not at 12/31/15, it's going to tell me that I am not at my fiscal end, so I can't run it. But it does tell me if I have any prior year adjustments. So if I have any prior year adjustments, you may not even notice them if they were balance sheet entries to the previous year, but you need to go ahead and close it. So prior year adjustments will be closed. When I say OK, I'll see that there was an adjustment made to the income statement for negative $30. Since it was, then I need to go ahead and close this before I can close my current year. There's an easy way to tell if you have any prior year entries that need to be closed. One is to come in to close current year. If you don't get any errors and it comes straight to this page, then just hit cancel. If you get that I just got that says you have prior entries, then go on and do the prior year. There's another way that you can tell fairly easily if you have any prior year entries, and that's here in the account. There is a field right here saying prior year's adjustment. That $30 we saw was the effect it would have on the income statement, but as you can see, the balance sheet has a tremendous adjustment in it. So most of these entries are going to be probably in the balance sheet. So here's a prior year adjustment. So if I go to conditions and I hit P, it goes to prior year adjustment. I'm going to say not equal to 0. I just click in that field. Not equal to 0. I say OK, and then I hit next. And it shows me all of the accounts that I have a prior year balance entries for. And as you can see, I don't really see any for the there's the $30 that affected the income statement. The rest of it's just in the balance sheet, but still it's important. It's important to go on and close your year to make these not be in the prior year anymore. Okay. So you can go ahead and test that now. You can just get into your system and just make sure that you don't have any prior year entries, either by looking in the account or trying to close the year. You can make adjustments to the prior fiscal year for the prior year, but you can't do it previous to that. So for 2017, you can make entries right now as long as you're in 2018, but you can't make any entries for 2016 or prior without going through a bunch of hoops and getting a consultant to do it. So make sure that you've got all the entries in before you close your year. You can also archive your general ledger data, just moving it, and again, File Doctor with compact files. To prepare for the year end, it's just the same thing. Post all new files, though. Post all new files. Make sure that your new files are clean all the time. Run and look all the time. Look in your new files, almost daily. Because if you run reports and it's missing data, especially in job cost or GL, I say especially, but all of them matter, then you want to be sure. So I just go into Inquiry, Entries by Batch, and then I'll look in the new file. And these are unposted. Fortunately, everything's posted here. But make sure you can double-click on each batch, and it will show you the journal entry. And it's probably the date. And if it's an in and out for the same date, then you can delete that through Change Entries over here in General Ledger. You go to Tasks, Change Entries. Now, if these entries came from AP, you made a reversing entry, it's all, the correct amount is in the General Ledger, and these are just hanging out in and outs in your new file, and you can't get to them, it's probably because over here there's a setting that says Edit Transactions Created Outside General Ledger. This would allow you to edit AP transactions, AR transactions. So you don't really want to do that in General Ledger. It's much better to go over to AP or AR or wherever it came from and make the adjusting entry there. But sometimes you just can't do that. And especially if you're trying to get rid of these in and out in the new file that have the wrong dates on them or something like that. So once you click that, it will then, when you go to change entries, all your AP entries, AR entries, everything will show up. Otherwise, just your general ledger entries will show up. Okay. And it says here, do not close the fiscal year at the end of the calendar year unless it's also the end of your fiscal year. Of course, we've been talking about fiscal years except for our payroll and our 1099 year. All the rest is fiscal year. And general ledger be last that you close. So everything now is just repeating in detail and getting into the detail. Again, back up your general ledger files because, of course, it changes everything in those master files. So. And then you're going to need to, if you have multiple prefixes or multiple companies, fiscals, you're going to need to close each one separately. And I don't know if you've noticed, but on your financial statements, if all of your fiscal entities are not in the same date, then nothing will show. If you do a consolidated financial statement, no date will show. That's a good indicator that, of course, you're not in the same month for each one of your companies. And then it just tells you what happens when you close the fiscal year. And then this comes for the annual archive after completing the year-end processing. But this is what you want to do after you do your year-end entries. So you'll go ahead and close the fiscal year. You can even move your transactions to your history file if you want to. go ahead and move those. But as far as your annual archive, the one that you're going to keep, that is your written set of books, is going to be after you make your year-end entries. And I realize that AP and AR and payroll and all that is going to have the current year. We're going to have 2019 processing in it, but it'll also have 2018 that you can run reports from. So you want it to be complete. After this, we get into producing the W-2 forms. We're not going to go through this detail. However, in payroll, if you go to tasks, we're going to run through it right quick. Federal e-file and reporting. And I updated earlier today, so it should not give me that message that I need to update. And there they are, the 2018s. So if I choose the W-2, W-3, then, of course, I have to choose 2015. But I could choose the current year or last year. The current year in here just happens to be 2015. Next. And here are all the employees. So it says select the employees you want included in this run. If you have one federal ID number and you want to include everybody, then you do not have to go through here and select and deselect. If instead you have in one payroll master, you have multiple federal ID numbers and you need to split these employees out, then you'll need to choose you'll hit select none, then you'll go through and select the employees that you want for the first run and make sure that your federal ID number is correct in payroll in the tax group. And then after you run those, then you'll have to come back in here, and the next time you'll have to hit select none and choose the ones that you want for the next federal ID. Otherwise, you don't have to go through and do that. It's only going to include people that have amounts this year. So now it tells you basic information. So. Kind of gives you an idea of how long it'll take, because there's only, what, maybe 20 employees or something, 17, something like that in here, maybe a little more. Well, okay. Well, while that's working, I want to, here it goes, of course. And it'll let you know if it's out of whack, but I'm going to continue. So here you can test drive with the first 25. Here you can test drive with all of them. And here you can go ahead and process them. So in the test drive, it just doesn't save anything. It asks you for your company federal ID number. And then it asks you if you have multiple payroll data files. If you have multiple payroll data files, if you have multiple master files, then you need to click this and you're able to combine them. Otherwise, you say, no, I have a single one, and it pulls everything from there. You need to fill out this information so they'll know how to reach you. Are you filing for your company? You say yes. And for my state and local items, I don't need my state unemployment information on my W-2s. So, but I can't remove it. So it will not let me go further until I put a number in. So once you're clear over here, then you can hit next. And then it wants to know if anybody's exempt from Medicare or Social Security taxes, if you have anybody in the clergy. Do you want to use control numbers? This means that you could use just a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 if they're not going to print in alphabetical order, or if they are going to print in alphabetical order, maybe you also want them in numerical order. So you could say yes. And then what is your control number? And if you start with 1, you say it's a 941, and next. And there they are. So even if you're not sending them out from here, even if someone else was doing them for you, you could verify the information is if you had it. So here they are. So you have totals up here at the top. You can verify these totals with the reports that you ran in payroll. And it's going to tell you, first it's going to verify the employee information. If we go to the next step, then it's going to want to check all the zip codes, whether they have a retirement plan. So you'll be able to check everything while you're in here. If any of these federal ID numbers didn't work for them, then, or wasn't a valid number, I should say, then it would come up with errors. And it would tell you those errors as you go through the different steps.
This invoice is not in the book. Is it going to be a December one? Or do you
Teresa?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. So then once you check everything here and you have your state and all of your boxes and you're happy with those and you keep hitting next step, and it's going to verify everything. And once you're good with it, verify all of their data. And you have questions here that you can type in and look up. And now it offers you the complete, which it'll offer more than once as we go through here. It will print employee copies and mail the next day. It'll track delivery of the W-2s. You can do online employee copies and copies for your records. It'll file this, which it would file this for free. And then you have this, and then the reconciliation reports filed. $1.83 an employee. And to me, that's a pretty good deal. But depending on how many people you have, here there's 51. So depending on how many people you have, will determine, of course, how much. So for 51 people, it's less than $100. If you don't want to pay for all this stuff, then under other options, you can, oh, look at here. Now they're charging. Because this was free in the past. So now it's going to cost me $28 if I e-file my federal W-2s, and I still would pay it. And then do you want to e-file your states? Well, I do. Basically, I don't do states from here. I do states from over in state setup. And then I get a discount. And then do I want to print them? So, of course, I can just print them as well. And it tells you this is just a records copy. And then if you take this off, then this is your official copy, and you would mail it in. So you can mail it in for free. You can pay to have it filed electronically, and then you can click this to get your copies. So basically, this is going to give me a copy, and this is going to give me a copy. So my total cost is $28. And again, it's asking me if I want to do this again. And I want to print the employee ID number as a control number, or I could just do this, starting with one. Or I don't have to include them at all. If you hit print here, all it's going to do is print this list. Okay, it's not ready to actually print. This is just a review. This is what it's going to do. It's going to e-file the W-2, e-file the W-3, and it's going to print the employer W-2s. Okay. So the first report is the employer W-2. This is my copy. Okay. And it tells me down here, copy D for employer, copy D for employer, and there's a different employee in each box. And I have 13 pages. So there they all are. So this is my copy. So I can do next step. And it wants me, of course, to put my perforated paper in, but from my copies, I don't need to do that. As you'll notice, it does not allow you to print to a PDF. And then report 2, this is the federal W-2. Okay, this is your copy, since I had it on e-file. Otherwise, and it's going to print with your copy on it. Otherwise, it would be the official copy that you would mail in. So now we're going to have, of course, 2 to a page like it normally does. So this would be basically the pink copy right here, copy A. It's your pink copy. And then you have your W-3. And there it is. So it's an easy way to get a total of all the payroll. So you can certainly go and make sure that all your 941s equal up to this, and just make sure that you do your reconciliation before you actually file it, because you want your 941s to equal what's on here. So then if I went to next step, now that I've done all this, if I went to next step, then it would actually go into the filing of it. I can go to File, Save, not here, but on that report that I had back there before I generated these reports, I could hit Save, and if you're still working on them, that's what you'll want to do before you actually generate them. And there we are. And then it wants to know if I want to save this report. So anything that I changed here won't be saved. One thing I want to point out also is this Generate HR Forms. Generate HR Forms, it has, I don't know if anybody's even seen it, because they didn't say a lot about it when they brought it out, but it just gives you all kinds of forms that you can hand out to your employees or keep information on. We have new hire alerts, so you can turn that on. Do you need probation alerts, and then how often? And do you want to enable termination alerts? And it's based on the information that you put in here. So we have a pre-hire packet, and the pre-hire packet is full of different forms. So if we go into it, we can go into packet themselves. You can edit it. You can print it. You can just look at it. You can print it without editing it. You can also do as a blank form. You can do it for all employees or just for an individual employee. And then you can choose who. Or you could choose a terminated employee. So here's an entire packet. We have a new hire packet, probation packet. We also have the individual. So here's 2018 W-4. Absence request forms, address change forms, all kinds of forms here. Okay. electronic W-2 consent. So I don't know if you knew they were here, but they are here. So you can also customize forms here. You can customize an entire packet here by saying, let's say on the new hire packet, what you want and what you don't want. This is what's already in there. You can add stuff to it or take stuff out. Customize your header if you wish. Then it would show you any history that you had in here for your forms and any alerts. The reason I bring this up is because it's important to go ahead and get a new W-4 for the beginning of the year. It's important to get a new one every year. So here we have one. So you could go ahead and do it for all employees, print it out, give it to them, let them fill out the part down here, and then just hand it back to you. You can also do an employee manual here, if you wish. It's a Word document, but it'll save it in here for you. So it's a handy-dandy tool. Producing the ACA forms. There's information on producing them here. You do not have to, if you're not self-insured, then you don't have to show who was covered, of course. But you still will need to show some information on here. This is the form for your company. This is a form for every full-time employee. And you can fill it in straight from going into selecting pays. Pays. Include an ACA hours. So this should be included, whatever you put in for this pay should be included in the hours that determines whether you're a full-time employee or not. Then you would want to do it. Now, if you have per diem, you would not want to include per diem. If you had any other kind of an other or regular pay that shouldn't be in there, then be sure not to include it. But the hours that they work or the hours that they don't, if they're a full-time employee, should be in there. So once you do that, it tells you over here, right here, how to do it in the, basically where we were just a minute ago. Instead of choosing your 2018 W-2s, you're going to choose your 2018 1094, 1095. But to get the information in there first, if you go into ACA compliance, you can also do this in each individual employee if you want to. But here you get to see all the employees. So if you put a year in here, and if you want to include terminated employees, then certainly if you have any terminated through the year, you'll say yes. Okay. And it's automatically going to fill in with 130 hours for full time. But if you need to change this, then you can go into each one and you can come change it. So if they're not full-time in January, they didn't get hired until February, then they were not working. See how it changed everything else? Not working. So we have to go back and say full-time. Now, let's say that they were not working in January, they were working 2 weeks in February, then they were not exempt, and so now you make these full-time. So there's a little work to be done if you have to fill this information in. But once you do and you save it, then it'll fill in on all those forms that you do. if you enter your time on a daily distribution grid, if you're set up where when you enter time in payroll and a little box pops up and says, put in the hours for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, then you can say use daily distributions, and it'll fill in those hours for you instead. Because that way it can tell the year-end date, the month-end date by the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday dates that you enter. As long as you're entering dates by day, then you can get the month. Otherwise, you're going to have to calculate it manually. Once you save it, then it's good to go. Then you can run your ACA forms. All these are the same screens. And then here is where that information goes that is on that report that you print out. There's a report in payroll that you print out and use it to fill in this information. Okay. All this information should fill in for you. If there's an error and it's missing something, then it'll tell you what the deal is. So it wouldn't hurt you to go ahead and run it now and be prepared. See if there's any errors in the setup or anything that you need to fill in to get it ready to go. Okay. 1099s are the same way. You just fill in. It's just like the W-2s. It's going to ask if you want them to send out those 1099s to all the vendors for you. And then, of course, you have to pay for them. And I'm guessing now that 1099s are not free either anymore. I'm guessing it's so much a vendor for them to file. However, I would guess that it's worth it. Talking here about producing the Form 941, I'm sure that you're doing that every quarter. So every quarter you bring in your 941. But again, you want to go ahead and do your 941 and do your, add up all 4 of your 941s and make sure they equal the total on that W-3. All right. So I guess we have time for questions. So if anybody's talking with their mute button on, you'll need to turn your mute button off. No questions? Everybody still here? I think they all just put their phones down and left the room.
I think so, probably with their hair on fire.
All right, guys.
Thanks, everybody. I will send an email out to everybody on the list to give you a link to, I will post the video or audio of this webinar both on YouTube. Now, I forgot to push the record button, so the first couple minutes will be missing, but it jumped in pretty much right after Belinda started. So I'll send that link to you in the next day or so.
Great. Great. And of course, if anybody has questions, you can email me. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have. If you need help, or as some of you have in the past, if you just want me to do them for you, I'll be glad to do them for you. Just let me know, and we'll line it up.
Thanks, Belinda.
Also, if you have any archiving to do and want me to do that while y'all are on vacation or on holiday, then it would be a good time to do that as well. So, all right. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.